So I turned to my left, and as I turned, not more than 15 feet away from me, from behind a bush, something stood up. The tigress was sitting 15 feet away from me. Clearly,
Dangerously
yeah.
close. At 14, a tiger's gaze changed his life. 22-year-old Ishan Shanwas is the founder of Echo Inspire, who's helping India fall in love with the wild again. While everybody is building for speed, scale, and visibility, Ishan chose a very different path. He's the author of The Light of the Wilder Things, best-selling on Amazon across 4 categories. And through his work at Echo Inspire, he's inspired, educated more than 28,000 students across 6 states and 100 plus institutions. He's been applying entrepreneurial mindset to environmental educational ventures. He is building something real while he's figuring it out along the way. And that's something that's really rare. I'm Aishwarya Ramnath, and this is Why With AR, where we go beyond what people build, how they build, and understand truly why they build it in the first place. Let's jump into the conversation with Ishan, a naturalist, a young environmental leader, and like he calls himself, the student of the natural world. Welcome, Ishan.
Thank you for having me.
So I'll jump into the question directly, right? You're a Gen Z in an AI world, stepped into the wild. Why?
Well, I suppose I've been interested in the wild for as long as I can remember. I've been very lucky to have been exposed to the wild from a very young age. My family, half of my family lives in Kerala. And so many times a year we would drive from Bangalore, where we're recording this, to Kerala. And that drive goes through Bandipur Tiger Reserve.
Right.
And I would spend those minutes, maybe an hour that goes through the forest with my head outside the window, just looking for all the wildlife I could see. And it was those visits repeatedly that had something of an effect on my childhood brain. And I think all of this came to a crescendo, so to speak, when I went to a boarding school that was in a forested valley where I ended up studying next to wildlife. And that's where this particular interest took off.
So through Echo Inspired, you've also mentioned at a lot of places that you're sort of using this to pitch it like a startup. You've iterated it, and you've also pitched it to a lot of colleges, and you've also had some rejections. So do you also sort of see blending in the environmental studies and entrepreneurship today in what you're building?
Yeah, so EcoInspire, okay, so for those of them who don't know, EcoInspire is an environmental education venture that I built, where I went to schools, colleges, and even some corporates, and I conducted environmental workshops with the simple goal being to inspire them to care for the natural world, because that is a core motivation of mine. And when I did this, I decided when I started this venture and as I slowly built it, that I wanted to run it like a startup, lean, efficient, reaching out to as many people as possible, taking in as many rejections as possible. In a way, I saw people rejecting me as a sign that I was actually moving ahead, because it meant that I was reaching out to enough people. And so on a basic level, this involved reaching out to these institutions, however possible, whether it's through an inside contact or whether it's through a direct email or whatever way I could find, and telling them who I was, telling them about the work that I had done, this book that I wrote, the Instagram platform that I'd built,
Right.
and asking them if I could conduct a session for their students. And I'm happy to say that more people accepted me than rejected me. And that's how I was able to take it to all these different places that you mentioned.
Right. And you're the author of The Light of the Wilder Things. What inspired you to write that book?
I've got this question a lot, and I find it interesting because one can make the argument that this book was always in the making. I've been involved in this space as a volunteer for many years. I've been volunteering for all these different projects. And as I did this and as I sort of explored this passion of mine, I read a lot of books about wildlife. And I think in the back of my mind, those books had something of an effect. I think it was something that slowly built in the back of my mind. And then one day I remember this was December 2022. My father just casually mentioned that it might be a good idea to convert all these experiences that I'd had, which I'd recorded in my journals,
Right.
into a book, because I think people might find that interesting. And it was that simple idea of him just throwing this out there that made me think, hey, that's not a bad idea. And so I remember that night. This was in Munnar in Kerala. It was a rainy night, and I opened my laptop and I just brain dumped 5,000 words of what the rough book structure could look like. And then 2.5 years later, after writing and writing and writing and editing and editing and editing, the book got published. And I'm happy to say it's done so well.
You're a Gen Z,
I am a Gen Z.
right? Do you think Gen Zs look at the world very differently than the rest of us do? And do you think you fit into that world, or you've built a world of your own?
I do think Gen Zs look at the world differently. But I do think there is a spectrum within Gen Zs itself. Of course, there's a difference between Gen Zs and older generations. And I think there's a difference among Gen Zs itself. So there isn't a clear distinction that I can draw. But what I can say is that if you're someone who likes snakes and birds, you tend to be a little deviant from the norm, so to speak. And it's a difference that I embrace with all my heart.
So, do you think you're completely different from the folks around you? Did you fit into what they were trying to do or what they were trying to build in your career, or?
I mean, I don't know about career because my career is just starting, but I can say socially that I have found myself at odds many times with the company that I was keeping. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I found that there have been many occasions in my life where I've felt slightly odd, and I've learned to embrace that.
Great. And I've also come across something very interesting that you wrote on LinkedIn, and it stayed with me, right? You said you wanted to be the voice of the creatures and the landscape that couldn't speak for themselves. I mean, that is so deep. And could you tell me what was running in your mind when you wrote that? Because that's actually truly deep and very emotionally mature.
See, this emotion is something that I realized as I was writing the book. And it's something that has stayed with me, and it will stay with me, and it'll stay with me to my grave. I have had my life enriched so much by the natural world.
Yeah.
And so, in some capacity, I knew very early on that I had to do something. Whether I do it as a profession, as a this, as a that doesn't matter to me. In some way or form, I need to give back to these creatures who have given me so much. And I know right now that I will never be able to give back as much as I have gotten from the natural world. I've gotten this renewed sense of purpose, this sense of wonder, which I think is so lacking in today's day and age. And I am enormously grateful for it. And so the book, the Instagram platform, Eco Inspire now, and whatever is to come in the future, all of this is one small way in which I can give back, and I can say thank you, because my life has been enriched so much. I tell a lot of people think that I'm only a nature and wildlife person. I'm not, but I have to say that, I'm more than that. But what I have to say is, I would not be the person that I am if it weren't for the natural world. So it's, in a way, I see it as something of a duty that I need to perform.
Like a responsibility.
Yeah, it's my responsibility. Think about it. If someone is, like, think of a family member. If they've given you, like, if they've helped you in some capacity in your life, it is almost biological to reciprocate, right? Especially when that person needs help. I think of it in the same frame.
Could you give me an example of that? What experience gave you this feeling?
Are you asking for a specific encounter?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. So I have this, as most people interested in the natural world, I have this library of encounters that I can choose from. I'll choose a particularly spicy one for you.
Please.
All right. This was last year, May. 1 or 2 weeks before I had to graduate. I'd come back down south. So my university is in Delhi, but I'd come down south for a bit. And I had gone to Wayanad. For those of you who don't know, Wayanad is at the top of Kerala.
One of my favorite locations.
It's pristine. It's beautiful. Yes. And it's a place full of jungles and thus full of wildlife. And I was in this particular plantation that was next to a forest. And I was with 2-3 people, and one of us, or not me, but somebody else had seen something move in the distance.
Okay.
And they happened, like, because it was neighboring the forest, you often had animals like deer and elephants, very rarely tigers and so on, jump out of the forest and come into the plantation because they don't see these borders, right?
Right.
So he saw something move and he said it could be a spotted deer. Why don't we just go and have a look? I said, sure. And I went with him. And when we reached that location, in a pile of elephant dung, of all things, there was a pug mark of a tigress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I thought it was very poetic. Not in mud, but in a pile of elephant dung, there was this pug mark. And so, of course, we got really excited, and it looked pretty fresh. And so we were wondering, was the thing that we saw actually a tiger and not a spotted deer? So anyway, we saw that, and we walked perhaps 10 feet from there. And from my left, I heard this. I'm finding it hard to describe this. I think they call it a chuffing sound, like a kind of that sound, and with following which there was a low growl, like a very basal growl. So I turned to my left, and as I turned, not more than 15 feet away from me, from behind a bush, something stood up. The tigress was sitting 15 feet away from me, and she stood up and she showed me her teeth. This was not a move of aggression, but tigers pull back this skin to. So this is the nerd in me, okay? Bear with me.
Please.
Pull back this skin to scent the air, to taste the air, and of course
Okay.
my scent would have been in the air. And so I first was scared because she was showing me her canines, but she was actually just scenting the air and she was looking at me, and I was shocked because seeing a tiger in the wild is first of all something that rarely happens.
Yes.
This is an animal that is designed by evolution to be hard to find.
Yeah.
So to see it so close is one thing, and that too, to see it this close, 15 feet is an absurdly close distance. And so, I mean, what happens next? Well, I'm still here, so clearly,
Dangerously
yeah.
close.
Yeah, but I made it out. But the point is, the fact that God graced me with such a close and special encounter gives me that much fuel to then go and speak on their behalf.
Was that the tiger gaze that changed your
No,
life?
this was just last year. So the first encounter, which you might have read
Yeah.
about in the news, was something that happened when I was 14 years old. Again, in Bandipur, of all places. That's the
Right.
forest that I care about the most. And that was a separate encounter. I've been fortunate to have seen a tiger maybe, what's it now? Maybe five, 6 times in my life. Some might say in this community, some might say that that's a very small amount, but at least for me, it's
I've not seen one, so that's a huge amount for me.
there is still time. You'll see one.
Hopefully, if you can take me one day.
Done.
So, you have a lot, you said like you have a library of experiences with the wild, right? But there has to be something that kept pulling you back into the wild. And what has the wild taught you about life that you have not read in any books or no mentor has ever taught you?
Oh, that's interesting. So there are two questions in there. I'll answer both. What has drawn me back is the constant knowledge that there might be something lurking beyond that bush. Quite simply, that is the motivation that sort of pulls me into the forest. This idea that maybe there is something there. I should go see. And
Curiosity.
Curiosity. Yeah, at its fundamental, on a fundamental level, it is curiosity. Just this idea that there might be something lurking right beyond that bush. Let me go and check it out. And oftentimes there is. It might not always be a tiger. It might be a snake. It might be a lizard. But this idea that there is a living, breathing being, something that has thoughts just like us, that makes me dream. As for what it has taught me, there are so many things. It has taught me about danger, about life, about death. But and so I find it hard to pick one thing.
What's one thing that's
Yeah.
helping you build your life today from the wild that you've learned?
One thing, and this is something I'm thinking about a lot right now, is that something or creatures that I have been taught to fear from a very young age actually have no interest in harming me because I'm just not that interesting. That has taught me a lot. For instance, snakes, let's just take snakes, a creature that is hated across cultures, across borders. This is an emotion that, pervades the globe. And this is something that I don't understand because I was taught that snakes are creatures that are out to get you, vicious, and there are movies that speak to that emotion. But all the snakes that I've seen have always wanted to get away from me. These are creatures that are not interested in me. And that's one particular reason why I feel so strongly. Uh, um, uh, that's one reason why I feel like I need to speak for snakes in particular. Snakes, sharks are another one. You have movies like Jaws and so on that
Yeah.
portray them as beasts. But I've been in the water with sharks. These are creatures like we aren't their typical food. They haven't evolved to eat humans. They've evolved in the sea to eat seafaring creatures, and we aren't seafaring creatures. And so this dissonance between what the public believes and what the reality actually is something that I'm trying to bridge because it is poles apart, and I do not like that.
And at a very early age, you have learned certain entrepreneurial mindset that even till today, 30s and 40s, folks who have been running companies for a while also find it difficult, right? Let me actually very particularly tell you what I mean.
Please.
So, I have read your newsletters, Outlet, and you have mentioned value creation and system thinking is something that you've inculcated already, even today at Echo Inspire and in whatever you do. How did you come up with that? Did you read it in a book or is it something that came natural to you?
I'm so tempted at this point to say that it came naturally to me, but I think that would be a lie. There were two people, and it's funny because at this day and age, for my generation, our role models or points of inspiration come from the internet. So there are two people in particular. There's a YouTuber called Ali Abdal, who I turn to. He's someone who taught me about this. And there's another gentleman by the name David Perel. So this is a man who, in some ways, pioneered this idea of writing on the internet to build a personal brand. And I was very lucky that I came across his content at the right time. So he conducted this flagship writing course. Not in the sense of creative writing, but writing to build a personal brand. That sort of writing for the
Right.
internet. He conducted this, and it's something that really took off in the pandemic, and that's when I saw it. And I thought this was a brilliant idea because here I was at home with nothing to do, staring at the fan as it was going, and I realized that I needed something to do. And lo and behold, I come across his content, and I decide to then and there open up my laptop, figure out how to build a website, and just start writing. Speaks to a bias to action, a mindset that I live my life by. And then I was fortunate enough to win a scholarship to his program and attend it twice, which really helped me develop all these systems. So you mentioned the newsletter. It's one thing, and okay, I've paused the newsletter now, but I can tell you how a newsletter should be run because I've done all these 100 issues. It's one thing to just write something and put it out there. It's another thing to build a reservoir of work that I can turn to when, say, the week that I can't write because I have a wedding to go to.
Right.
Right? It's another thing to just open a blank document every time and think, oh, what should I write today? It's another thing to build a cache of ideas that I can then turn to so that I don't have to come up with a new idea
every time.
each time. It's one thing to think about what format I should write in. It's another thing to have a draft with a format already set in place
Right.
so that I can then copy and paste and then just fill in with what needs to be filled. So these are the sort of nuances that you learn when you start thinking like an entrepreneur. And it's a way of life that I swear by.
That's a valuable piece of information, and I think we all need to take a quick note on what this 22-year-old guy just gave us an insight on, right? I mean, that's a lot of people today are building personal brands on Instagram, LinkedIn. Substack is something that is taking light in India very recently. Not a lot of people actually read on that. I'm also on Substack, but one of the most valuable information today, if I can find on the internet authentically, is on Substack. Right. And a lot of brilliant people write on that. I think you guys need to really check that out. So, You also mentioned while in the starting of the conversation, you want to run Echo Inspire like a lean startup. And you've also mentioned you're also experimenting a lot of entrepreneurial aspects and insight that you have read across books and podcasts into what you're building today. So, what's your journey next? Do you want to continue into Echo Inspire or are you building something else?
That remains to be seen. I am thinking about that now. So Eco Inspire was built on the heels of the book that I wrote.
Right.
Right, I wrote the book. It seemed to do well, and I saw this surge of popularity. And in my mind, it seemed obvious that the next logical step would be to ride that wave and turn it into something instead of letting it fizzle out. Now that I have sort of reached the 1 year mark, I'm thinking about what to do next. I have a choice in front of me. I could, of course, I could easily scale this, take it maybe international or something, but that isn't speaking to me right now. I feel like I've, been there, done that. I've spoken at this point in 25 cities and towns across India.
Yes.
Right? It's a lot. And I mean, I told you I have Delhi after this interview. After when we're recording, I have to go to Delhi and so on to speak. I feel like I now want to move on to something else. I've reached a certain point where I'm at a crossroads. I could again continue with this, or I could do something else and come back. I think I should focus on something else. There are some things in the pipeline, and see where that goes. But having said that, in whatever I do next, I will always be building something. I just physically cannot live a life where I'm not building something. It's just not in keeping with the person that I am.
Right. So, what's hitting in your curiosity right now? You also mentioned something called wonder leads to action. Right now, are you currently reading something, or is something pulling you towards building on those spaces?
So there is a book in the works, and I haven't announced it anywhere. But that is the I have another book in the works, but it's that isn't the main thing that I'm doing. I do have this book now, and I have an agent and so on, and I'm working on something. But as for what speaks to that particular emotion, there are many things, and I am interested to see where it takes me. There isn't any specified direction as of now.
Right. So, the shift from wildlife to entrepreneurship, there are two different perspectives that I have observed.
Please.
Right. So, in the wildlife, it's a lot about stillness. You need to know when to make a move, when not to make a move. You learn to adapt to your environment. We all the animals work on instincts. So today, if you moved into entrepreneurship, would you choose to trust your data or instincts better?
It's tempting to say instincts, but I believe in data. I think data for sure.
Why?
Because I mean, data doesn't live in the ether. Data indicates something, right? The reason you collect data is to identify patterns. And so I cannot conclusively say one or the other, but I would, at least at this point in time, lean towards where the data is pulling me. Of course, I think instinct is something that drives you into the space in the beginning, right? Any entrepreneurially inclined person is inclined because of a certain instinct, and I think that's what sort of drives them to that place. But I don't think instinct is something that you can solely rely on. It just doesn't compute with me.
So, what's your decision-making framework so far? What have you relied on yourself to go to a decision?
If you want the truth, I am, and I admit this, I am not a very patient person. All right, it might be surprising to believe because I can sit for hours in the wild, absolutely fine. But in terms of what I'm trying to build, I am impatient, and I try to use that to my advantage. So, for example, Eco Inspire, or let's go back, the book. My dad told me this idea of writing a book. I did not want to sit and think about what the book would be about, or think about how will I get a publisher. I knew I would figure that out, but if I just sat there and if I thought, I would have just been consumed with all this overthinking. I knew when that idea struck a chord with me that I had to open my laptop and I had to just put my fingers to the keyboard. Because if you want to write a book, and this is something I tell a lot of aspiring authors who reach out, if you want to write a book, open a Google Doc, write 10,000 words, and then come back to me. I will not talk to you until you write 10,000 words, because there's this fanciful idea of I want to be an author and so on. But writing a book involves putting words on the page.
Right.
So this idea of get started and figure it out later. There's this beautiful phrase that I love. It goes something to the effect of build the plane as you
Right.
fly it.
Yes.
And I love that. And that's brilliant. That's
Right.
brilliant. And so even Eco Inspire, I knew I had this popularity. I knew the book lent me some credibility, and I knew I had that as a card that I could use to get into certain spaces to speak. And so I built Eco Inspire, the initial first few, the pilot, so to speak, in
Right.
entrepreneurial terms. The pilot sessions were obtained by simply reaching out to all these people, not overthinking, oh, will they accept me? How do I craft the perfect cold email? Oh, no. I reached out, told them that this is who I was, and I threw together an MVP of a presentation. And once I did that first session, I was very conscious as I did that first session as to how the audience was reacting. When I saw them drifting off, I knew, okay, that slide
Right.
just isn't cutting it. So I cut it from the presentation. When I saw them look like this, I knew that that was a slide or a topic that was grabbing them and holding on to their attention. And so I doubled down on that. Again, it speaks to this same logic of building the plane as you fly it. If that is how I operate, and that is how I will always operate.
When you were building Echo Inspire, you're also at crossroads right now. So, what is that uncertainty that keeps bothering in your head at the moment?
See, I started Eco Inspire. I think it was 1 week after my graduation, where I threw my cap and did the whole shebang. And I watched over this last year as my friends went into actual jobs while I was trying to throw this whole thing together. And so that is a little weird now, because now now I'm in a space where, of course, I want to work actually in the real world and see what it's like before again doing my own thing. And I find it weird because I watched them do quote unquote real work while I was building this thing on the side, and it's a slightly lonely place when you try to build it on your own, right? It's not especially something of this nature where the entire thing hinged on my personal brand. I basically built all this capital, and I was now using it, all this social capital, so to speak. And now I was ringing it because I used it to then get into all these places. And it is a path that isn't quite well defined. Not quite well defined, it isn't defined. And so you have to chart it yourself, which I don't mind. I mean, if you're an entrepreneurially inclined person,
Yeah.
by definition, you're someone who likes uncertainty, or rather who can operate in uncertainty.
Yeah.
But it is certainly different from say, what some of my peers are doing.
Great. So, if you had to start all over again, where and how would you start?
Eco Inspire. That is interesting. If I had to start Eco Inspire all over again, it's tempting now to say that I would like to have planned a little more and and gotten the structure concrete and clear. Keep the caveat that this is post-purchase rationalization. I do think that if I had indexed maybe a little less on this heavy bias to action, that I might have had a smoother ride. What do I mean? I'll tell you.
Okay.
Like maybe 10 sessions into Eco Inspire, 10 sessions that I conducted, I decided to create a spreadsheet. I thought maybe it's a good idea to create a spreadsheet and input the data. That should have ideally been something that I had done earlier. I should have built a spreadsheet where I had the schools that I want, to target, the contact that I have in the place that where they are, so that I could map out how I wanted to grow. And that's eventually something that I did, but I did it 10, 20 sessions in. If I had done that before, then I would have inadvertently created something of a roadmap for myself, as opposed to me figuring out the path 10 sessions in.
Later, yeah.
Right. So that's, again, this is post-purchase rationalization, because I know that if I had indexed on planning too much then I might not have started this, and we might not be having this conversation. So I can't give you a very clean answer, but I do feel like, and this is something I'm telling myself now, if I can have this bias to action, but not have this obsessive bias to action, and plan a little bit, it might be to my favor. When we talk next, I'll let you know how that goes.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
looking
yeah,
forward to
yeah.
seeing what you're going to build next. Very interesting character you are. So, this journey has instilled an amount of confidence in Ishan, right? What has this experience given you so far?
For one, it's given me the confidence to do something like this. Like this is so easy for me now to speak, in front of a camera or on a stage, while maybe 2 years ago, Ishan might not have found that easy. I remember the first session, and this was the first session was with. Okay, so I've been fortunate to speak to crowds with hundreds of people, even one crowd with thousands of people. But the first session started with 16 or 14, one of them, sixth graders.
Oh,
Again, children in particular are especially scrutinizing because if they aren't enjoying something,
yeah.
it's
You can
very
see it in the
obvious. They're
faces.
like, oh, they'll sit like this. And it's actually a much higher bar.
Yeah.
Adults in some ways are a lot more polite. They sort of mask their
Yes.
boredom. So the stakes were that high. And so I was quite nervous going in front of those 16 sixth graders. And I remember how nervous I was feeling because I had to perform. All of this had built up to this time, and now I had to perform. Now it's easy for me. At least I don't have that stage fright before speaking in front of an audience. And this is interesting because I had to moderate a session at the Bangalore International Center a few weeks ago, and when I found her and I told my mom, she was like, "Ishan, kuch aata hai? Do you know? Will you be able to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I should be." And she's like, "You're not afraid of speaking on stage?" And I that's when it hit me that something that might have appeared intimidating 2-3 years ago is
Quite easy for you right now.
it's easy to the point that I mean like it's don't get too comfortable in this now. Now
Yeah.
find something else that makes you uncomfortable, and that's something I'm looking for.
Right. Something that challenges you.
Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to get too comfortable. I don't like that. Yeah.
Lovely. So I have two of my favorite questions that I ask all my guests.
Please.
Right? First one, what does growth mean to you?
Being uncomfortable.
What is your definition of success?
Ooh, that's deep. I want to give you a good answer, an honest answer. At 80 years old, if I can look back at my life and tangibly point to things that I have built, things that weren't there in the world that I had created into the world, like the book, like Econspire, then I would think that I lived a successful life. When I'm 80, I'll give you a call and I'll let you know.
Hopefully, if I'm alive.
Yeah, you'll be.
Cool. So as a Gen Z, what's your lens on the future of entrepreneurship and the startup ecosystem?
Ooh, that's deep. From what I know, I would like. I look. I can't make any predictions because I don't see that as my space. But what I would like to see and what I think might happen from a very basic level is that we will see a lot more entrepreneurially inclined people to building things because, like we mentioned earlier, it's never been easier to build.
Right.
It's never been easier. Even a newsletter or an Instagram platform, for that matter, can be built because we have now a one-stop production device sitting in our pockets. It's never been easier. Like even Instagram, I know I'm harping on this point a little bit, but let me tell you. Earlier, 100 years ago, it would have been impossible for someone like me to reach an audience simply because the tools weren't there.
Right.
Yeah, it was just impossible. But now with the book and with Econspire, the reason I could reach people across the country was because I had all the tools and platforms that I did not have any fancy equipment to build. I had my phone,
Right.
which I gave to someone, and I made these videos, which aren't the best production quality. It's not something like this. This is such a fancy place.
Yes.
This was something that I just threw my phone to someone and I said, record this one thing. But I built this capital and this proof of concept and this proof of credibility online with this simple device, which has now allowed me to get all these cool, crazy opportunities. Because all this to in service of the point that it's never been easier to build something.
Right. So you said something that stayed with me while I read your newsletter again. I've done a deep research on you. Entrepreneurship isn't a label, it's a way of engaging with the world. Can you elaborate on that perspective, please?
I think there are two types of people who engage with the world. There are consumers and there are producers. And it's not a mutually exclusive label. You can be one and the other. But more often than not, you have people who are only consumers. And when you're a producer, you have to be a consumer by definition, but it doesn't work the other way around.
Right.
So we have a lot of people consuming content, but we have very few people creating said content. If you think about it, I can't give you the statistics because I don't know it, but for the number of users that are actually on Instagram, it's just narrowed to Instagram, for example. For the number of users that are on there, how many people are actually creating content to serve that audience? It
Right.
might be a fraction of, I'm thinking 5% might be a lot. I don't know the figures. I'd love to check it out after this, but that just shows you the stark difference. And I think
Yeah.
when you go into that producer mindset, that creator mindset, that is when you see entrepreneurship as a way of engaging with the world. That's when you see entrepreneurial mindsets as a way of engaging with the world. I remember, I can tell you, out of these 3 degrees that I did, environmental studies, entrepreneurship, and sociology, the only degree where I felt like I learned about how to actually live a certain life was entrepreneurship.
Right.
About how to think about branding. I had this one course on how to think like a lawyer. It's an entrepreneurship course, but it is branded as that, but it was a course on how to think like a lawyer. Now that is actually something that I got to then apply, and it's a mindset. It actually informs the way that I speak, even in settings like this. Now I create all this content on Instagram, right? It involves thinking about. You might see a reel now that I've posted, but I'm thinking 3 months into the future.
Right.
Right. I have that horizon in mind. I'm thinking about, okay, I have this body of content, especially with this style of content. It isn't something I can record with a green screen, right? It involves going into the field, and so it involves me planning 3 or 6 months ahead and thinking about how I will schedule that content. It's something that you as a consumer might not see, but it is something that as a creator I need to embody. And so I think now having bitten the pill and or rather taken the pill, whatever the phrase is, and moved into this producer sort of mind space, I can't go back. I can't be a consumer, only a consumer. It is just so unappealing on so many levels. In my mind, the content that I consume, even the fiction that I read, has to later inform the work that I do. It has to inform the writing that I do. It has to inform the way that I speak. If I see a certain phrase, for example, right now before we set this up, I was looking at my phone and I saw someone use the phrase "at the first blush" as opposed to "at the first instance." I thought that was a very interesting, very unique phrase. I had never heard it before. Now I've saved that into my archive so that I can then use it in the next interview that I give.
Right.
I believe that the content that you consume has to inform something that you do further down the line, and this was one instance of it. So that is at least how I see it.
Long-term vision. You're always thinking
I know.
long term.
More than long term, I think this has to benefit me in some way, which is a very crass way of putting it. But I don't want the benefit that I gain from consuming a certain content to just live and die in that moment. I want it to help me somehow in the future. So yes, it is long term in that sense. I can tell you as a writer, if I see a certain phrase that I like in something that I read, I have a Google Doc where I input it, or I input my version of it, so that then when I write later and I'm thinking about how do I convey this particular emotion, I can turn back, read that particular phrase, and get some inspiration and then turn it into my own version. Actually, a smarter way to do it would be to create a Notion page where I could tag it, because then it's a lot more searchable. That's what I'm trying to work to now. But the point is, as a consumer, you would just read that, think, oh, that's a nice phrase, and then move on. That is unfathomable to me. I just do not get on with that sort of way of living. It has to help me, and that's why it's funny because as a writer especially, like that author has already done the creative thinking, and I'm in a way piggybacking on it, but that is just how I operate.
But you also apply your perspective to it when
obviously
you
no. So it isn't. It is to save that kernel of inspiration and then turn it into something that is uniquely you. That is how I see it.
I've not asked you this question because you're into wildlife, although it's a very kiddish, childish question.
Go for it, please.
What's your favorite animal?
I get this one a lot. It changes. I think it changes every 10 to 15 seconds. Right now, I might
Top
be.
three.
Oh,
And why?
it's slightly weird, but I do like vultures. And I can give you a very concrete reason why. The Lord of the Rings, have you seen it? The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Those stories are fundamental. Perhaps the most fundamental story in my life are those The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It's something I've grown up with. I love it more than anything else. And in that story, in that world, in Middle Earth, there are these big eagles that fly over the mountains. And when I went to Uttarakhand for the first time, I saw these vultures fly, or Himachal for the first time, both of them. I saw these vultures flying over the Himalayas, and it just evoked that imagery, the imagery of these great eagles flying over the mountains in Middle Earth. And so vultures I have a thing for them. Snakes, I do have no, not like it's not like I like them more than something else, but I have a slightly different relationship with that group of animals because, for one, they are so misunderstood, and there's something so interesting in the way that they move. They don't have any limbs,
Yeah.
so this sort of fluid way they move, it's in some ways hypnotic to me. So I'd say vultures, snakes, and see, I'm tempted. Like I can give you a list of 10, but
One more.
one more. Right? Yeah, that's sort. So I have to choose one. And this might be a boring answer, but big cats have a certain appeal. Maybe because of the media that you consume, but big cats for sure. Yeah,
But which animal taught you more about life?
I'm gonna answer in these three because you gave me three. So I'm gonna tell you what each of them have taught me.
Then.
So, vultures. Vultures are high up in the sky. Right now, we see the world from our perspective, and our world is, by definition, so small because we can only see what's around us.
Yeah.
But vultures are high up there, so they can see the world.
Right.
And when you get something, you get a taste of that, what that might look like when you are up on a summit and when you look at down to into the valleys. That just makes you realize that you're just a small person in this large world. Even I've been fortunate enough to fly in an airplane, and when I look out of the window, and you see entire cities just pass by, you realize that Ishan, Ishan or Ashwarya, you're a rather small person in this big world, right? So
Yeah.
that's the perspective is something that vultures have taught me. Snakes periodically shed their skin,
Right.
right? In a way, they leave a part of themselves behind as they grow up, and we all have to do the same. Right?
Yes.
You're not the same person as who went to school 20 years ago, who went to college. Oh, you're right. You've
Or a year
changed.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, or even a year ago, or even
Yeah.
a week ago. There's something that might have happened that might have fundamentally changed you.
Yes.
So I think that this idea that you leave parts of yourself behind as you grow up, that is something that snakes have taught me, and also they've also taught me that you might hear a lot about a certain group of animals or a certain group of humans, but the reality isn't quite the case. They're actually just other creatures trying to live their lives just like you. That's something that snakes have taught me. As for the last one is big cats, right? I have had a very close encounter with both a tiger and a leopard, right? And these are creatures that have killed people. It has happened before, and if I before having these encounters, one would imagine that I would not have made it out alive, having gotten so close to a wild tigress. 15 feet is nothing,
Yeah.
right? I was something similar happened with me with a leopard in deep inside the mountains, and that time I was alone. I'd gone alone trekking. It's not something you should do, but I did it, and I had this very close encounter with the leopard. But these animals let me go, just showing me that, I mean, they're not interested. No, that's of course not a that's not a blanket statement. But the point is, these animals let me go, and I am grateful for it. That's why I'm alive, and they've taught me that not everything is as how it is portrayed by other people.
Right. That's okay. That I'm gonna sit with that for like 2 minutes because you give such deep insights, especially about the snake. You sort of shed only when you let your old version go. Are you available to even achieve what you want to achieve? Get into that version of you where you want to become who you want to become, and I think that is very, very deep and very insightful, right? While you were building Echo Inspire, you were going on platforms, stages, podcasts. But there was a version of Ishan when nobody recognized who you were, right? Unless and until you got that validation or the first big stage for you, you were building alone, right? And entrepreneurship is a lonely phase. How did you at such a young age get out of that overthinking phase, alone phase? What was running in your mind to stick with it?
So this won't make sense at first, but it will eventually. I I remember when starting to build, what was it? I think my personal brand. When I made a conscious decision to build it, this was maybe 2021 when I launched my website. Um, I remember having some feelings of, oh, this might be a little cringe. What will my friends say? But up until that point, I'd moved schools and I'd gone to this boarding school. And when you go to a new school, you obviously don't fit in because, especially at that such a late stage, because people have already made
Yeah.
friends. So I had developed this mindset of I don't care what you think. I'm just going to do whatever I want. I developed that when I went, especially because I'd gone to a boarding school. So that is all the much it's a little harder because you're on your own in some ways, and that mindset has stayed with me even now. So I remember launching the website, feeling some of these emotions, and then telling myself, I don't care what people think. Either I do this or I don't do this. Which world do I want to live in? Obviously, in this world where I do things, where I launched the website. So I launched it. Same with Instagram. I had to put myself on camera. It's
Right.
such a weird thing, speaking to a piece of glass. But I said, either this happens or it doesn't happen. Which one do you want? Obviously, I want this. So I put it. Even Eco Inspire. It's so weird, Ishan. You're not taking a job immediately after college. You are, creating a job for yourself. It's a little unconventional. Either I ride this wave that I've built and worked so hard for,
Yeah.
or I don't, or not even worked hard for. That's fine. Hard work. You should work hard. Great. But I'm saying it's such a unique opportunity. Who at 22 can say that they have traveled the country, that they've seen all these different places, interacted with all these different people? I'm so honored that I had this opportunity. It's less of me. I want to rephrase it so that it's not seen as only something that I built. Yes, I built it, but it's also an opportunity that landed in my lap.
Right.
Right. So I've been so fortunate that I've talked to people across this country. I've got to see all these different places and gotten to tap the pulse of this nation, and I'm a better person for it.
I have this question again. If you don't mind me nitpicking into your personal
Nitpick
thing,
away
but you also said you journal every night,
every night. Yeah.
right? So, what about this podcast would you journal, or would you even journal me?
No, I would reflect on how I spoke. This is something I do every time. I reflect on whether I spoke well, on the moments that I stammered, because I don't like that. Trying to improve the way that I speak. I think it's very important to learn how to communicate
Yeah.
effectively. Something that I'm trying to consciously control is the amount of ums that I say. Ums are the worst sound in the universe. I hate that. And so the moments that I feel like saying I want to replace by just pausing. I think that's such a monumental shift in the way that you speak.
Right.
Instead of saying you're just pausing, being comfortable in your space, being comfortable with that silence, and thinking about what you want to say next. And so that's something I'll journal about tonight.
Oh, lovely. So, if somebody who's watching today wants to start something unconventional, like you did, what from your learning would you tell them to start with?
Start. Just start. Don't think so much. Just start with a website. I wanted to start a website. I went online. I typed WordPress tutorial. Found there are several 1 hour tutorials.
Right?
It's not that deep. Okay, it's very simple. Now, of course, things have changed. There are AI, so you can build it even more easy. It's easier to build. But whatever medium you choose, find that YouTube video that tells you how to do it, and then start. If you want to write a book, write 10,000 words. It's command something C to show the word count. At least on my computer. Open that in your Google Docs. Start writing 10,000 words. A book gets written by putting your fingers on the keyboard. So that's start. If you want to like sell someone something, like I was trying to sell these workshops, call up someone who might buy it or email someone who might buy it and tell them what you have to offer and wait for their response. And if they don't respond, send a follow up and do that for 10 people. Just start. I only have respect for the people who actually start and do the work. I don't have respect for the people who just talk. I don't like it.
Okay.
That is a bit harsh, right? But
No.
but the reason I say that is I have had people. I'm talking about the book, but it speaks to this notion of if you want to build something, what do you do? I've had people say that I want to write a book, and I've invested in them, and I've given them my tips and granular tips of how to do it. And then when I check in 6 months later, they haven't moved. Like the needle hasn't moved, which is what made me realize that I have a lot of tips on how to granularly do things. But all of that is downstream of starting.
I think no, it's not harsh. I'll tell you why, because from my personal experience as well, I'm an overthinker and I've used to wait for the perfect time to do stuffs, and especially this podcast also. And I'm not somebody who put myself on camera, and I was a very shy person and I'm not a camera person. But today, if I'm able to sit and do this podcast, it's because you know what I did? I did not figure out how to do the podcast. I just figured out who I want to speak to, send them a DM, send them an email, message, whatever. And when I got a response, I'm like, okay, now I've invited this person. Now I have to just figure out how to do this. So you have to just put yourself out there. And once you get that first validation, a first yes, I don't care how many people are watching this, right? But I'm doing it for me, and I'm having this incredible opportunity to sit with people across, people like you. But there's so many other people I've interacted with, and it's only given me a broader perspective of life, right? And this is hopefully, I live for impact, and I love to leave a small impact on anybody I'm speaking to today, even if it's a formal conversation, informal conversation. So the reason I started this podcast was to do that, leave an impact on the world with people who are building. Your perspective matters. So you gave me a very nice insight saying that you just need to start. And those incredible lines that you use, build the plane while you fly it, although it's not practical, but that's how you live your life, right? So yeah, I mean, just start, put yourself out there, make a fool out of yourself, learn from it. People are not going to remember. And we also have this feeling that everybody is watching us, but hardly anybody remembers you. Everybody is so constantly thinking about their own overthinking, their own world. And I think once you get there and you've made an impact, it lasts. And I think
Brilliantly said.
that is something that we need to keep improving yourself with, because the more better you get, the people that you interact with are also going to get better with you. And hopefully one day somebody's going to remember you for what you said, and that's going to help somebody. So I think in this generation of where there is media coverage throughout, like you said, you can reach out to people from different worlds, different countries. Earlier, we couldn't do that. Our perspective was narrowed. But right now, today, we can sit here and speak to somebody in Australia and have maybe understand what they're building, how they think. And maybe that's going to help us as well, right? So putting yourself out there, just start, is actually one of the most underrated, simple advices, but the most practical one that works through experience.
To the people who are listening, those who actually listen to this conversation and then start,
Yeah.
they will have earned, at the very least, my respect.
Yeah. Correct. And I think they're stepping into a new world that they're going to surprise themselves with.
They will surprise themselves. That's nice. That's a good one.
So I think that's a wrap. I've had a genuinely interesting conversation with you, Ishan, and I'm so glad I met you. I'm so glad you're in my life, and I think the viewers who are watching today could actually learn so much from it. I learned so much from you. You're 22 years old, and I'm 30, and you are far ahead of so many people I've come across, and I think there's a long, long way for you ahead, and I'm super curious to see what you're going to build next, and hopefully I can help you in some way.
Thank you so much.
So how did you feel the conversation today?
I think this is very nice. I think we talked about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of things now to go back and journal about. I thank you for this.
Lovely. It was lovely having you, Ishan.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap with today's conversation on Why with AR. Something that I can take away from this conversation from Ishan is just not what he's building. It's about his way of thinking and the way he sees the world. There's a new lens that's emerging from Gen Zs in the way we see the world and perceive it. They're questioning everything that's an obvious path and choosing something that's more real. They don't have a perfect plan. They start off and they're figuring it out on the way. So that's about it. You don't need a perfect plan to start. You just need the clarity to start and the courage to stay with it. So if you're somebody who's wanting to build something from scratch or planning to build something, drop it in the comments and I'm going to read them personally. And if something about this conversation stayed with you, made you pause or think about your why more deeply, then please follow and subscribe to Why with AR, and I'll see you on the next one.